what do you consider the top three or four most dangerous disconnects from reality on the challenges that your study of the human predicament result in?
Yeah, I think there are four of them. The first one is that we're caught in Tainter's predicament of excessive complexity. We've piled complexity on complexity to the extent that we no longer have the energy and resources to support that complexity. As Tainter would put it, we've got negative returns on our investment in complexity. So we can no longer afford our existence. An example is the state of U.S. Infrastructure. We can't even maintain what we got, much less build all this new infrastructure that everybody talks about. And then with complexity becomes a bureaucratic sclerosis. We can no longer respond. And then complexity increases the risk of disaster. The current pandemic really illustrates how readily failure can propagate through a complex system. I would give a shout out to Neil Ferguson's book, Doom. He's very good on how we've wrapped ourselves in so much complexity we can no longer respond effectively to challenges. And just to sum that up, we can no longer afford our existence as a civilization, and it's only by accumulating a mountain of thermodynamic and economic debt that we've survived this far. Then the second point that I think everybody needs to understand about our current predicament is that exponential growth has caught up with us. The usual way of putting it is to say, well, we've overshot the carrying capacity, or our global economic footprint is too large. But I like the idea of exponential growth better because you get a sense of something like a tsunami building up, which is threatening to overwhelm you. And we're habitually blind to the consequences of exponential growth. It's usually illustrated graphically with a single line that shoots up to eternity. But a better way of graphing it is if you have the exponential growth curves, two of them go out, and all of a sudden you have this rapidly expanding cone that looks like a giant maw that threatens to devour you. If you graph it that way, you really discover the implications of exponential growth.
But an economist would say that our growth is not going to be physical. We'll grow from information and we'll figure something out and we'll decouple from energy use. And if oil gets to be $300 a barrel, it won't matter because that price signal will send something and we'll innovate our way out of it. I mean, I know you know this.
Well, I will just point to the issue of food. I mean, we are physical beings. We don't live on air. That alone, I think, would negate that kind of argument. That plus the fact that we need air, we need water, we need life support. We can't just trample on that and expect to survive. Let's see. We were talking about exponential
complexity
growth
and exponential growth.
Yeah, and I think we learned during the pandemic just how rapidly exponential growth can run through and upset everything. And we're now in that same existential predicament for the society as a whole. We're vulnerable. Another aspect of exponential growth that I think people don't realize is that each doubling represents the sum of all previous consumption or use. And so in the last 30 years or so, we've used as much fossil fuel as we used in the previous 150 years. And fossil fuel use is still growing at about 3%, which means that roughly 25 years from now, we'll have it double that. And that's obviously simply impossible. I'm not a numbers guy, but there's a wonderful book by Vaclav Smil how the world really works. He's a super numbers guy, and he will convince you that net zero by 2050 is a pathetic fantasy. To achieve a smooth transition to anything like a livable world, we would have had to started maybe 5 decades ago. Now that we didn't, we're too late. Then the third point is that at this point in our existence, we're trapped in a classic double bind. On the one hand, the scientists say we have got to reduce our usage of fossil fuel energy by 2030 to stay within 1.5 degrees centigrade. But we've got to keep the lights on and keep the economy going with fossil fuel while we try and build this new wonderful electrical infrastructure. But unfortunately, you can't bootstrap that culture. In order to build it, you're going to have to use fossil fuel, and actually quite a lot of it. And then because we're building it in the way that we're doing with solar panels and that kind of thing, we're still going to need fossil fuels to maintain it in the future. So unless we come up with a really radically new and different kind of technology, we're trapped in a double bind where we can't quit fossil fuel in the short term. And the overall point is that increased fossil fuel use is locked in for the foreseeable future, meaning we'll inevitably exceed our budget and we'll go to at least 2 degrees and probably more. And that 2 degrees will be bad enough, but it'll be amplified. And a recent scientific paper said that amplification in the Arctic can be up to 8 times the mean global temperature. And that's a really scary thought.
Yeah. Okay. Complexity, exponential growth, the double bind. And you said that you had 4.
Yeah, I've got the last one, and this is the previous ones are on the biophysical scale. This one is a purely political one, so a classical political, social, economic dilemma. And in my opinion, it will be the real killer. If we were to move rapidly to a decarbonized world, we would overturn the economy, the society, and the polity. It's just not prepared for that kind of radical change. But moving slowly will produce some form of climate catastrophe, conditions worse than we experience now.